Konnichiwa. Welcome to Chocolate with Ed Garcia. The best part of Chocolate with Ed Garcia is chocolate, lovely chocolate, lovely chocolate. Today we have macadamia nuts inside chocolate. This is Meiji. Very delicious, very delicious. Let's get one. Get your chocolate. I know you have chocolate. Get it, get it. Get your chocolate. Bring it near your mouth. Bring it near your mouth and eat it. Uh-oh. Technical difficulties. We're having technical difficulties. Let me apply my engineering skills. What can we do here? I think we need to operate. Let's operate. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Get your chocolate. Get your chocolate. And oishi. So delicious. Okay. Today's speech 24. Examiner's Amendment. We're going to learn about examiner's amendments. And we're also going to use this little bell. When we finish one slide, we'll do the little bell and go to the next slide, okay? Like this. Watch, watch, watch. Magic. Okay. Here's the bell again. Okay. What is an examiner's amendment? An examiner's amendment is corrections or interlineations in the specification or other papers made by the examiner. In other words, amendments made by the examiner. They can be to the specification, to claims, to figures, to information disclosure statements, etc. Now, they are permitted only under two conditions. Number one, if it's approved by the applicant. Generally, this is a verbal approval, as we will see during an interview, or an expressly permitted administrative amendment, such as MPEP 1302.04a, which is renumber the claims. Okay? So for this kind of thing, the examiner does not need your permission to make that change. Also, changing titles, he does not need your permission. Now we're going to ring the bell. Go to the next slide. Number 2, who has the power? The examiner's amendment must be signed by the primary examiner. Very similar to negotiation authority that we discussed previously. And the amendment must be entered into the file and a copy sent to the applicant. So the applicant is kept aware of what's going on. Now, there's another reason for this. If the applicant decides that the changes and/or additions are, quote, unacceptable, it's just unacceptable, you're a bad examiner, unacceptable to the applicant, an amendment may be filed as provided by in 17 CFR 1.312, blah, blah, blah. So, the applicant may amend to cancel or remove, actually, to undo the examiner's amendment by amending in the opposite direction. So if the examiner adds the word black, the applicant can come in and delete the word black, for example. Next. Here are some examples of verbal authorization. So, these come from form paragraphs in the MPEP. Authorization for this examiner's amendment was given in an interview with somebody number 1 on date number 2. Okay? That's the way the Patent Office wants the examiner to document the examination. Into the writing records of the Patent Office and a copy to the applicant. Now here's another one regarding extensions of time. It's interesting. An extension of time under 37 CFR is required in order to make an examiner's amendment that places this application in condition for allowance. During a conversation conducted on day number 1 with person number 2, person number 2 requested an extension of time for 3 months and authorized the director to charge. So the point here is that this verbal authorization to make an amendment which puts the application in condition for allowance, which will cause a extension of time fee to be assessed, must specifically be approved, in the sense that the applicant knows that he's approving an examiner's amendment with that will cause money, that will cause a late fee, extension of time fee. So it's kind of interesting. We're finished with this slide, so number 4, normal use. Consider claim 1. The original claim said a dog. Now, during an interview, the applicant proposes a black dog. The examiner agrees that a black dog is allowable. The applicant authorizes an examiner's amendment in order to make things happen faster and in order to save the applicant the time and the money of filing a response. In this case, the patent attorney apparently already has authority to authorize this amendment. Now, the applicant authorizes an examiner's amendment, and a primary examiner signs the examiner's amendment and signs a notice of allowance. Woohoo! Yay! Notice of allowance! Now, usually the above events occur after one office action and one response, and then an interview. So now we go to number 5. Number 5, dangerous use. Again, we have claim 1 and original claim a dog, and in this case, no office action has been received and no response has been filed. Now, during an examiner-initiated interview, the examiner proposes a black dog. He says, just make it black. If I can make it black, I'll do it for you. I'll do it for you, and it will be allowed. But you, applicant, must respond to me quickly, not 3 months from now, because the patent examiner's clock is ticking. So he wants a quick answer. Usually, let's say 3 days, 1 week. Now, when the applicant receives this information, there's several possibilities, right? One, he can say, hooray, yeah, make the change, get it allowed now. But this is extremely dangerous for several reasons. One, you're in a rush. So it's difficult to take your time, contact the examiner. Maybe you're in the middle of doing something, and maybe it's more complex than it looks. So you either have to be very, 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 very careful and do it, or you can say, no, this is too fast. It's more complicated than it looks. Now in this case, black dog versus dog is pretty clear. You can probably figure out quickly if you're willing to accept that modification. But the problem is that United States applications filed from Japanese companies often contain translated Japanese claims. And the Japanese claims do not translate well for many reasons. And the examiner is looking at claims that probably have not been carefully reviewed by a U.S. patent attorney. Okay? The examiner is not a patent attorney, and he's certainly not a patent attorney representing the client. So the examiner has different things he's thinking about, and he may overlook something, and the claim may be, even if it's allowed, it may be invalid in court due to, for example, indefiniteness. So you have to be very, very, very careful with this kind of situation. And maybe, often the best thing is to say, no. give us an office action, let us see the references, let us read the rejection that forces us to make these claims. So this kind of examiner initiated, proposed examiner's amendment before the first office action is extremely dangerous. Okay? Be very careful. Now, next. Dangerous use. Okay, we just discussed most of this, except I want to say one study, 28% of the original claims filed by the Japanese company were rejected as indefinite, 28%. Now, there was an additional, perhaps 28%, which in my opinion were also indefinite, but were not rejected by the examiner as indefinite. And this unrejected indefiniteness is usually cured during the first round of amendments because the examiner is interpreting the claim in a way that you don't want, for example, because the claim is indefinite. Even though the examiner did not say it's indefinite, he's like, okay, well, I guess it means this. You're like, no, it means this because we wrote it indefinitely, but we're going to fix it now. So you fix it. So, very dangerous. Slow things down in this situation. Okay. You know what? This bell's not working. We're not going to use the bell anymore. Let's just keep going here. Okay, number 7. Let's consider a case where there's a dog, claim 1, and claim 2 is the dog of claim 1 wherein the dog is black and the dog has long hair, okay? The dog in claim 1 and 2 features in claim 2, black, and long hair, okay? Now, office action rejects claim 1 and allows claim 2. So this is option A. This is the first thing that's normally done, the most common perhaps. So you take both of the features from the second claim, the dependent claim, and put them into the independent claim, and you get, in a response, place claim 1 in condition for immediate allowance based on indicated allowable subject matter, and claim 1 will be a black dog having long hair, okay? Both features from claim 2 are inserted into claim 1 and claim 2 is canceled. This is the first normal response, just put into condition for allowance. But let's consider other options. Number 8. What is a second normal option? Well, watch this. Okay, option B. In a response, place claim 1 in condition for an argument. Not necessarily an allowance, but an argument regarding one feature. You amend claim 1 to say a black dog, okay? And then you amend claim 2 appropriately, in this case, wherein the dog has long hair, okay? So we take the feature from claim 2, one of the features from claim 2, and put it into claim 1, like this. Now, in option B, the examiner may reject amended claim 1, thus costing money, right? The examiner may say, oh, no, it was the long hair was the patentable feature. Or the examiner may say, no, it's the combination of black and long hair together that is patentable. That's unusual. How do you do that? Okay. So option B may be rejected, okay? So you have some allowable subject matter. You did not put it in condition for immediate allowance based on indicated allowable subject matter. You said, no, let me fight for a little bit more, and boom, okay, rejection. Oh, thousands of dollars more you have to spend, and months of time lost from the life of the patent, okay? So, now, the applicant may request an interview to discuss the amendment before filing a response, and that may gain some information, and but nonetheless, the interview also costs money. And the examiner may say, I'm not sure, maybe, it appears to, I'm going to have to search. Or he may say, yes, do it. Or he may say, no, don't do it. It's hard to say, right? But in any case, it's going to cost money. Now, there's other possibilities. Here we go. Now, we're getting into some advanced examiner amendment theory. Here we go. Watch. This is very powerful. Very powerful. Will save you a lot of money if you understand it and use it properly. So first, let's look at MPEP 1302.04. That's a section that discusses examiner's amendment. And there are many examples about verbal interview, the applicant said, blah, 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 okay? Because if the applicant is communicating in writing, generally the applicant will make the amendment, okay? He will submit a response with this amendment. So, the authorization is generally verbal. For example, if there's an interview and the applicant submits a proposed amendment and the examiner says, yes, this looks good, then the applicant may say, okay, do it, please make the examiner's amendment. Okay, there's another situation where it's verbal authorization of a draft amendment previously provided. But see, the draft amendment is not a formal response. It's not a response. It cannot be entered. Okay, it's merely an agenda for a discussion. So continuing. Now, all of this is verbal. Now here, I think I had a pretty good idea. Now, in my opinion, an applicant may provide written conditional authorization in a response for an examiner's amendment. What do I mean? Well, I mean that I'm not making an amendment. What I mean is that in writing, I'm telling the examiner, look, Mr. Examiner, if something happens, then I request that you make an examiner's amendment. And that can save me time and money if the condition occurs and if the examiner agrees to do it. Let's do some examples. I have a good number of examples. Now, so here is a written authorization to make an examiner's amendment. Okay, that's fine. For example, after the interview, after an interview, the examiner may propose an amendment, or they may agree that something is allowable, but the applicant says, okay, I have to talk to the client. So the applicant talks to the client, and then the applicant or applicant's attorney sends a miscellaneous letter or a authorized electronic communication, and thus in writing authorizes the examiner's amendment. So there are ways to authorize examiner's amendment using writings, although generally it's verbal, as I said. But now, I'm talking writing and conditional. This is a written conditional authorization. Additionally, this one is going to be very specific, very narrow. Let me give the example. Now, we're going to amend, as we discussed in option B. We're going to place claim 1 in condition for an argument regarding one feature, a black dog. Okay? So we can argue black makes it patentable. It might be, but we don't know. And we amend claim 2 appropriately. Boy, that's a difficult word to say. Let's do that one again. Amend claim 2 appropriately, as we previously discussed, by removing one of the 2 features. Now, in the response, here is my proposal. This is a new technique that I've never seen done, but I've been thinking about it for a long time. In the response, the applicant writes, quote, applicant hereby specifically authorizes the examiner to perform an examiner's amendment as follows, if necessary. There's a conditional. If necessary for the application to be allowed. Okay? So now let's look at the authorized. This is an authorized, conditional, specific examiner's amendment. Potential examiner's amendment. Requested examiner's amendment. So it may happen, it may not. And we propose this. A black dog having long hair Now remember, we previously in the written response put in the black, the first feature, and we're telling the examiner, hey, you know, if necessary, if you're going to reject this, do me a favor, give me an examiner's amendment like this, which makes one more amendment, adding the second feature from claim 2, having long hair, and then you cancel claim 2. Okay, so let's do this again. We, the applicant, are trying to get something broader than what the examiner has told us is allowable. The examiner has told us that claim 2 with 2 features, black and long hair, is allowable. And we're trying to argue that just black is enough. Just black is allowable. We don't need the long hair. And then we say, but please, Mr. Examiner, applicant hereby specifically authorizes, okay, here's the written authorization, the examiner to perform an examiner's amendment as follows. If necessary, okay, there's the condition, for the application to be allowed, boom, add the second feature, cancel claim 2. You see what I'm saying? Instead of getting a rejection from the examiner and then writing a response, putting it into condition for allowance in a way that everyone knows what's going to happen that you're going to do, you let the examiner do it. Let the examiner do it for you. He'll help you a little bit. This doesn't take him very long, and then he gets his production count. He gets his production allocated to him promptly. And examiners enjoy receiving their production immediately. In this way, they don't have to write an office action, okay? They can just do the examiner's amendment instead of an office action. It's faster, it's easier. Everybody's happy. Everybody's happy. I've never seen this done as an examiner or as a patent attorney, but I believe it will work, and I'm going to try it at the earliest possible opportunity. Continuing, here's one a little bit different. This one is also a written, of course, conditional specific, so this one is also specific authorization. Now, in this case, we said, okay, we put, for example, claims 1 and 2 in condition for allowance based on indicated allowable subject matter, and we're going to add new claims 17 and 18. We added new claims 17 and 18. Now 17 and 18 might get rejected, they might get allowed, we don't know, they're very broad, we're just, you know, we think we deserve a little bit more, but we don't want to receive a rejection, okay? If they're going to be rejected, then, okay, please cancel them, Mr. Examiner. So how do we do that? Applicant hereby authorizes the examiner to perform an examiner's amendment, canceling new claims 17 and 18, and here's the condition, if necessary, to make the claims immediately allowable. Okay? Nice. Isn't that nice? You say, okay, Mr. Examiner, you know, if you're going to reject it, come on, don't send us an office action. Just fix it like this. Very specific authorization. If I'm an examiner, I will like this. It's a written authorization, which is actually nicer than a verbal authorization because there's no confusion, right? If you do something, if the examiner says, okay, well, there was a verbal, I was verbally told to do this, maybe there's some confusion, there's some argument. No, that's not what I said. If it's in writing, there's no confusion. It's in writing, okay? So the examiner is not going to make a mistake. There's not going to be any disagreement because it's written for this kind of specific. This is a conditional specific. Now all of these are going to be conditional because if they were going to be unconditional, then I would make the change in the response. The whole point of this logic is for me to give conditional authorization. 12. Written conditional intermediate authorization. Okay, so this authorization is going to be a little bit broader. It's not going to be so specific, so narrow. Let's look at it. Applicant hereby authorizes the examiner to perform an examiner's amendment, amending the claims regarding informalities such as antecedent basis, to make them immediately to make them immediately allowable. Okay? Probably I should make it clear that this is conditional here. Or I could make this just general, a general authorization where you can always, I give the examiner permission to always make amendments versus informalities. Okay, so that would be a non-conditional authorization or a general authorization, which is not a bad idea. You might want to put this in every application and just tell the examiner to go ahead and do this. Frankly, I wouldn't, but it is an option. Okay, so probably this should be more clear, conditional here, similar to the previous ones. Continuing, okay, here's another one. Again, written condition intermediate. So this one is also intermediate broadness, not real narrow like the first two, and not real broad like the ones we will see later. Applicant hereby authorizes the examiner to perform an examiner's amendment amending the claims to make them immediately allowable by adding any feature or features from dependent claims 2 through 14 into independent claim 1, and then canceling or amending any of the dependent claims 2 through 14. Okay, so what you're telling the examiner is, hey, if you find any allowable subject matter in any of the dependent claims, but by implication not in the independent claim, for example, in claim 7, please, Mr. Examiner, solve this problem for me. Take the feature from claim dependent 7, from dependent claim 7, put it into claim 1, cancel claim 7, and hallelujah, it's allowed. Okay, so again, you're giving the examiner the opportunity to do two things. Mainly save you some work, save the applicant some money, save the applicant some lifespan, some delay, so you save him lifespan of the issued patent. Yeah. Now this one, of course, is a bit more complex, right? Because when you take claim 7, put it into claim 1, this may affect some of the other dependent claims. So because this is an intermediate complexity, the examiner is less likely to do this, right? If claim 7 is merely black, and then he may do it. But what if another dependent claim is green? Can you have black and green at the same time? Perhaps not. So this can get complex. Continuing. Now, here's another one. This one is broad. Written conditional broad authorization. Applicant hereby authorizes the examiner to perform an examiner's amendment, amending the claims as needed to make them immediately allowable. Okay? So, whatever you need to do. Indefiniteness, fix it. You want to add a feature from figure 2, do it. You want to put the feature from claim 7 into claim 1, do it. The feature from claim 7 and claim 13 and claim 18 into claim 1, do it. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, Mr. Examiner. If you can make these things, this application allowable immediately, hallelujah, hallelujah. My applicant is in a hurry. He just needs to write a issued patent number on a product that he's selling. You know, that's the reason he wants this application now. It doesn't matter what it says. This is how much power you're giving this guy. Now, okay, conditional broad. Now, of course, this may be more complex, and the examiner may not want to do it. He doesn't have to do it. He's under no obligation to make an examiner's amendment. That's always his decision, and he can only do that if, again, one of the two conditions. Number one, he has express authorization, usually verbal, but it could be in writing. Or number two, it's one of those exceptions, such as claim numbering, that he has authority to do even without permission from the applicant. Continuing. Examiner participation. Okay, this is what I just said. The examiner does not have to perform any examiner's amendment. The examiner probably is more likely to perform clear and narrow, specific authorizations than broad authorizations. Now, a broad authorization may also include a sentence like this. This broad authorization, let's back up. Wait, this is 15. As needed to make them immediately allowable. There could be another sentence that says, including but not limited to canceling claims. For example, claim 19 is indefinite. We'll just cancel the thing. Okay, don't even, just get rid of it. Solve that problem. So you can say that, canceling indefinite claims. Including but not limited to, canceling indefinite claims, including but not limited to some of the other things that we have discussed. Okay, you can just have a big list, and if any of those apply, then the examiner's like, okay, yeah, 3. It's a broad authorization. It includes 3, which is exactly what I'm doing in writing. So that would be good. Okay, 16, universal use. I mentioned this. Some authorizations might be used in every response. Every response, I say. For example, applicant hereby authorizes the examiner to perform an examiner's amendment, amending the claims regarding informalities such as antecedent basis to make them immediately allowable. Yeah. So here's the, this is very specific, right? Antecedent basis, informalities, antecedent basis, and to make them immediately allowable. You might want to make that a little bit tighter. You might want to make that conditional. If this amendment is necessary for immediate allowance, or if this amendment provides immediate allowance. Yeah, I would do this a little bit differently than I showed here. See the previous slides. Continuing. Now, correction after examiner's amendment. The beauty of the examiner's amendment and the beauty of many things prosecuting in front of the patent office is there are many mistakes that you can make and correct. Almost everything is correctable, either specifically like this or by petition. Almost everything. 99%. Continuing. So, correction after examiner's amendment, as previously discussed, the applicant can correct an examiner's amendment by a later amendment, and it's discussed down here. Should the changes or additions be unacceptable to the applicant, an amendment may be filed. As long as you have not paid the issue fee, don't pay the issue fee until you have studied and affirmed or confirmed the examiner's amendment. 18, disclaimer and risks. Now, this concept of written authorizations for examiner amendments, like I say, haven't done it yet. It's a new idea. I'm looking for a way to test it. But you just saw the relevant portions of the MPEP, and it's pretty clear to me that these authorizations that I'm discussing, written, conditional, especially written, conditional, specific, appear to me to be valid. And if the examiner performs an examiner's amendment, well, there you go. You have an examiner's amendment, and you get a notice of allowance. Life is good. Where are we now? So, if this happens, it saves you time, it saves you money. I love to save time, I love to save money. So if you can see something coming down the road, you can predict something that may happen, and you can, like playing chess, plan the next move. That saves you time. In fact, there's some chess programs allow you to make what's called a conditional move. So that's what we're doing. Conditional actions, planned in advance. So authorizing in writing broad examiner's amendments appears relatively low risk because an unacceptable examiner amendment may be corrected by additional later amendment. Okay, so if the examiner screws something up, or he gets a little crazy, or he's drunk. This may have happened. If he's drunk and does something poorly, you can fix it later without much problem. Continuing, as long as you don't pay the issue fee yet, then that causes more problems if you pay the issue fee. Continuing, the end of Chocolate with Ed Garcia. This is speech 24, Examiner's Amendment. This was the best speech ever. The best speech ever. Yes, it was. Definitely the best speech ever. And what do we do at the end of Chocolate with Ed Garcia? Mount Fuji. This is the Lake of Hakone. Hakone in the Sagami province. We have a lake and there's the mountain, and this one is a little bit unusual because there are no people. I love looking at the people, but this one has no people. It does have this very nice little house right here on the edge of the lake. That's a nice house. Let's look at it. There it is. Wonderful. Mount Fuji. Fuji-san. 日本が大好きです。ありがとう。さよなら。